In every Western country today, there are three clearly identifiable megatrends shaping the policies of mainstream political parties across the board. Whether you look at Germany or France or Britain, the US, Canada, Australia, whether you look at the left or the right, all mainstream parties support, firstly, ongoing immigration into our countries. They all ridicule the defense of borders and the idea of building walls or fences, while maintaining that strict border controls and immigration laws are somehow unfeasible. Secondly, they support the gradual build-up of global governance structures, such as the United Nations, the European Union, and transnational legislation in the name of human rights. Thirdly, they all support far-reaching global policies to combat supposed climate change. Immigration, supranational legislation, and climate policies. Those are the three grand projects that define the political undercurrent of Western mainstream parties, of both the left and the right. And all represent a transition from one type of society to supposedly another type of society. They stem from a vision of a new world. A world in which we would no longer be divided into different nations, different peoples, a world without parliaments that may decide things for just one country alone, and in doing so may greatly diverge from the parliaments of other countries. Indeed, it's a vision of a world in which we will supposedly all be growing towards one humanity, governed by common rules that are to be centrally administered on a global level. This would be a world in which a global superstate increasingly controls every tiny aspect of our lives, because everything we do supposedly affects the climate. As senior aide to Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said, and I quote, "We don't view the Green New Deal as a climate thing. We view it as a change the entire economy thing." End of quote. But that is exactly right. We are in the midst of a structural remaking of the world as we know it. Our nations, our cultural, political, and spiritual homes are being dismantled. Slowly but surely, our societies are becoming so diverse that a shared common identity will no longer be feasible. We're losing our democracies because parliaments get to decide less and less, as well as our freedom, because all of our lives are increasingly being regulated by the change the entire economy project that masquerades as saving the planet. It's crucial to understand that the fundamental idea behind these major trends is, in fact, Marxist. These three grand projects embody in their entirety an orchestrated transition towards a supposedly higher, utopian, peaceful and egalitarian stage of existence, the long-promised post-capitalist era. The result, alas, will be dystopian. This is because we are beings in need of a sense of community, a sense of home. Mass migration, global governance, and the new climate control measures take these things away. They alienate us from our actual lives. They make us nowhere creatures, inhabiting a land with which we will have lost all connection, living with people to whom we feel no relationship, and administered by bureaucrats over whom we have no control. We all experience this every day. The New World Order is upon us. Europe has already gone a lot further down this path, of course, than America, but it is happening in the United States as well. It's a phenomenon we can witness across the Western world and it is the greatest danger of our life. For study after study shows that integrating large numbers of people from entirely different backgrounds and cultures does not work. The demographic transition, therefore, leads to low trust, high crime societies with few, if any, cross-group connections. The idea might have been to create a super diverse society with a new type of man liberated from all roots of the past, solely geared towards the future, willingly subjecting himself to a project that is focused on harmoniously living together, but the result is the opposite. It's renewed tribalism, animosity and conflict. That's what the demographic transition leads to. The sovereignty transition, meanwhile, undermines our democracies. European countries already are being bullied by the European Union. But the United Nations increasingly intervenes with national decisions as well, as do the International Criminal Court, several human rights commissions, the Davos conferences, the World Economic Forum, and so on. Amplified by the climate accords that seek to reduce emissions, the overarching result is clear. For the trick is, with everything we do, we emit. Once the basic premise is accepted that emissions are somehow harmful and that we should limit such emissions to their very minimum, the new global administrators will then have an excuse to impose endless amounts of regulations on our lives and take more control every day. Modern impersonal architecture completes this process of political disowning and spiritual expropriation. From Pyongyang to Paris, the same lifeless hyperbuildings disfigure the skylines of our ancient cities and symbolize the power grab of the international elites over our democracies. They also seem to symbolize the omnipresence of migrants, for we're all migrants, we're all anonymous creatures amongst those buildings, and the absence of a shared national community which is referenced by buildings that we can identify with. The climate hysteria finally fills the spiritual gap that has been left by this process of disowning and overtakes our lives. It's the world we're heading for. It's a nightmarish vision of unfreedom. It's a future we have to prevent from materializing. We have to fight to protect our sense of home, our freedom and our democracy. We have to reclaim control over our nation states. We have to combat the quasi-scientific nonsense about planetary disasters and see it for what it is, a perverse pact between power-hungry politicians on the one hand and disowned people in spiritual need on the other. We've got to rebuild our homes, reclaim our lands and restore our freedom.